A very good morning and welcome to another interesting edition of Business Point, a program where we highlight business conversations concerning Nigeria and bring to you analysis of how investments are running and what is happening in the stock market in Nigeria. My name is Ubong Osaro, welcoming you to the program this morning. Let's start with the first story as we go to Lagos State. And the first business story we have says festive rush spikes Lagos ride-hailing fares. All right, so Lagos is Africa's most populous city with an estimated population of 22 to 24 million residents. Experiences intense transportation pressure during periods like this festive period. Ride-hailing platforms like Uber, Bolt, InDrives, and the other have become essential components of urban mobility, especially as public transport remains overstretched. But during this festive season, mobility demands historically has risen in Lagos State by 35 to 60%, according to transport and mobility analysts, driven by increased social events, religious activities, airport traffic, shopping, and intercity movement. Okay, so our fare dynamics and cost drivers of ride-hailing fares are primarily influenced by surge in pricing algorithm, fuel costs, vehicle maintenance and depreciation, traffic congestion, driver availability, and especially following the removal of fuel subsidy, petrol prices rose from 185 naira per litre to about 600 and 650 naira per litre in many locations. And Lagos is right at this moment. Lagos fuel alone accounts for estimated of 45 to 55% of driver operating costs from under 25% previously. All right, so reports from commuters during the festive rush shows that short intra-city trips from Lagos, those trips cost from 2,500 to 5,000 plus. Airport rides are doubling from 15,000 to 30,000 plus, and mainland to island routes are experiencing surge multipliers of 1.8 to 2.5%. And you know, just about this period, there's a lot of transportation that is being done. A lot of persons want to travel from the north to the east. There's been a lot of movement from here and there, and we're having it that in Lagos that at the moment there's a rise in fare as a result of the transport rush, especially for those who want to get on all of this ride hailing that we have now. So people just hire a ride, pick a ride. Okay, this is where I'm going from, maybe Obanlele to Surulere and all of that. So places that were 15,000, like airport job in Lagos, according to information that we're having this morning, is over 30,000 naira at the moment. And places that you could do 1.5 is over maybe 5,000, 6,000 at the moment. All right, so Lagos records over 5 million vehicle movements daily, yet road expansion has failed to keep pace with population growth. Rail and water transport alternatives account for less than 10% of the total urban mobility in Lagos State, placing excessive pressure on roads. Economic and social implication could be that this ride-hailing fares is actually disproportionate, but it affects mostly those who are low-income earners, informal sector workers, SMEs dependent on logistics, airport and hospitality workers, policy, regulatory outlook. At the moment, the Lagos State regulates conventional transport fare, but ride-hailing remains largely market-driven because, yeah, the conventional transport fare, we have the road transport workers. Government could talk to them, even though there's also been a lot of reportage that the prices of transportation has also risen significantly in those particular fields. But government could still talk to them. But for these companies, it is driven largely by a lot of factors, and one being market forces, as the number of availability of drivers, fuel prices, car maintenance, all of this come into effect to push up the prices of moving and movement from one place to the other in Lagos State at this particular time. So consumer groups have renewed call for seasonal surge caps, transparent pricing disclosures, fuel-linked fares adjustment, and this is one thing we have to talk about at this moment, because this is a concern for Nigeria. This is a concern for those who are informal sector workers, those who are low-income earners, that when the prices of petrol increases, a lot of persons who are in the transportation business will increase the price of transportation. But when the price also reduces, a lot of them do not reduce their own prices, and this calls for question. Why? Because there's been marginal reduction in the prices of petrol, PMS, that most of these ride-hailing operators use, but there's been on their own end significant increase also. All right, so they could talk about the fact that there's a lot of hold up, there's a lot of traffic at the moment, but since you also increase prices when this increase in PMS comes, why don't you also reduce the prices for the final consumer when the prices reduces? So the festive surge in fares reflects deeper structural problems in Lagos transport ecosystem. Without massive investment in public transport and road infrastructure, ride-hailing price volatility will continue to persist in Nigeria, and especially for those who do not have their own vehicle, or who don't want to move around with their own vehicle, or who don't know the location. The ride-hailing has been a wonderful innovation in the way we move, because you just get into a place and you put in the name of maybe a particular street and all of that. You get into a driver, you get connected to a driver, you speak with a driver, look at the price before you even select the driver. The driver comes by, picks you from point A to point B, and you do your transfer, or you pay cash depending on what you are doing, and off you go. So it's been very innovative, it's been very accommodating, it's been very comforting for those who want to move around. Maybe you don't have your own vehicle, instead of going to wait on the road to look for a vehicle and all of that. So it's been phenomenal innovation, but we have to talk about the fact that this is a festive season. There's a lot of spending to be done. A lot of people are paying here and there, but we also have to look at how much of the money is available for our Nigerians who want to use these services, especially at the time where the prices are up in Lagos State. But that's in Lagos, and it could be the same in other states, but we brought you the story this morning, our business story, first business story for the morning. But let's go check out another business story now. It's about NRC boss cracks down on illegal railway property deals. All right, so the Nigerian Railway Corporation, the NRC, controls thousands of hectares of land nationwide. Much of it is acquired during the colonial era. Over decades of underfunding and weak oversight, large portion of these assets were illegally sold, unlawfully leased, encroached upon by private developers. Scale of the problem could be the internal estimates suggest that over 30 to 40% of NRC land assets have been compromised nationwide. In Lagos alone, railway land value runs into hundreds of billions of naira, given prime locations in Ebute Metta, Yaba, Apapa, and Ido. All right, so the railway assets, and it's critical for freight terminal, logistic hubs, dry port, transit-oriented real estate development, and the federal government rail modernization drive, including standard gauge corridors and it depends heavily on recovered assets for sustainability and revenue diversification. So illegal line deals have deprived government of long-term revenue, encouraged corruption, corrupt network, undermining infrastructural planning, and some of the crackdown that the government has done of recent has been asset audits, title verification, legal recovery processes, collaboration with anti-graft agencies, and analysts warn that legal dispute from powerful occupants, political interference, slow judicial processes could actually at this moment lead to loss of billions of naira. But the Nigerian Railway Corporation boss is saying illegal railway property deals will be gotten back by the NRC. That's the Nigerian Railway Corporation. The Nigerian Railway Corporation has a lot of land and a lot of property all over Nigeria, from Lagos to Kano to Kaduna, especially in the colonial era when hundreds of hectares were given to the Nigerian Railway Corporation nationwide, all across Nigeria. And now a lot of persons took over those properties illegally. Some acquired it, but they didn't acquire it on the using the right path. And the NRC boss is saying this is the time for Nigeria to get back to the drawing board and get back those properties that were gotten from the country without we will be getting our properties back. All right, so we've talked about over years of underfunding, weak oversight, and to properly develop our Nigerian railway, our properties all over Nigeria, and even our railway system. The last administration, Muhammadu Buhari administration, placed so much emphasis on railway and how we can make our trains work and all of that, because that's a huge form of funding, and also that's a huge form of transportation, right? It will take off pressure off our roads, because heavy duty and cargo and some freight logistics will be moved from the rail, right? So the roads will have reduced pressure and will give our road a longer lasting lifespan, and those are conversations that we've had, right? But how are we able to better connect all over our country with railway, and how is the NRC able to locate their property, make sure they demarcate their property, and make sure they also safeguard their property? But there's also been complaints of underfunding and weak oversight of that particular agency of government, the Nigerian Railway Corporation. And large portion of their assets have been illegally sold. The NRC boss has complained about illegal, they sold some of their assets illegally, unlawfully leased to some persons without proper documentation, encroached upon by private developers. This is one of the things we will have to talk about. Illegally sold. Some persons have bought over these properties without knowing that these are properties of the Nigerian Railway Corporation. There's also been unlawful lease. Some people lease government property to fellow individuals as if it was their property. This property belongs to the government. This property is government property, but people just lease them to unsuspecting members of the public who may not know at that particular time, and it's not a good thing to do to somebody. All right, so some of these have even been encroached by private developers. Some private developers who pick up those properties and develop the properties without consent and assets by the Nigerian Railway Corporation. All right, so internal estimates suggest that over 30 to 40% of all Nigerian Railway Corporation land assets have been compromised nationwide by these things that we've mentioned. Number one, we said illegally sold, unlawfully leased, encroached upon by private developers. And the estimates suggest that over 30 to 40% of NRC land assets have been compromised nationwide. And in Lagos alone, railway land value runs into hundreds of billions of naira, given that these these assets are in prime locations. You mentioned Ebute Metta in Lagos, Yaba, Apapa, and if you want to get to develop freight terminals, we'll use the railway assets. Logistic hubs is also very important for railway assets. Then we could go ahead and talk about the dry ports that we could use railway assets for the country, and transit-oriented real estate development. So if it's going to be real estate development, it has to be transit-oriented real estate development. All right, so the federal government rail modernization drive has included standard gauge corridor, depending heavily on recovered assets for sustainability and revenue diversification. All right, so government's long-term revenue encouraged some of the things that these have deprived the government has been long-term revenue, encouraged corruption network, undermine infrastructural planning by the government, and the crackdown has included assets auditing by the NRC, title verification for all property that are found on the Nigerian Railway Corporation, assets nationwide, legal recovery processes, and collaboration with anti-graft agencies. And analysts warn that land disputes from powerful occupants, political interference, slow judicial processes could delay the process. But if sustained, the NRC action could unlock billions in assets in value and improve Nigeria's railway sector viability and reduce government dependence on budgetary allocation for this particular industry. Let's take another story this morning. 590 billion naira power bond deadline looms for investors. That's the next story I'll bring it to you. The next business story that we have for you this morning. 590 billion naira power bond deadline looms for investors. So the power bond Nigeria's electricity sector suffers chronic liquidity challenges, traffic shortfalls, energy theft, and technical losses. Let me just say a few things about some of the challenges that are being noted on this particular story as 590 billion power bond deadline loans for investors. The power sector over time have suffered chronic liquidity, ability to be able to get the funds that have been invested, get it right, and put it into and put it into back to work. All right, so we've talked about tariff shortfalls, that a lot of persons do not even pay the electricity tariff. In many places, people bypass lights and use and are able to have electricity without paying. There are some places, some villages that have not paid electricity bill for very long time. Sometimes some of these persons are even helped by people who are knowledgeable and people who have access or work with the power companies. So tariff shortfall is one thing that has been mentioned as one of the factors that have attributed that have that the sector have saw ground, maybe pass it through a poll that people do not have access and they just decide that they're not going to be paying electricity bill. And at the end of the day, it still goes back to the monies that have been invested by investors in that particular realize the amount of money. And at this point, we are looking at 590 billion naira. That's a whole lot of money. There's also been technical losses and foreign exchange exposure. These have left GenCos, that's the generating companies, unpaid for electricity supply. Right, so the 590 billion naira bond was issued to legally settle debts and prevent sector collapse. All right, so the current sector data shows that all over Nigeria, the installed capacity of the power of the GenCos is 13,000 megawatts. With 13,000, what can be delivered that will be shared to Nigerians is between 4,000 and 5,000. So you can see that more than half is not even delivered to be shared, because about 7 to 10% of that is also lost again. All right, so the distribution losses of billed revenue. All right, so the revenue that they are supposed to get from the investment is only about 60 to 65% of that particular revenue. So about 40% loss has been encountered by this particular discos and investors who invested in our energy bond. All right, so revenue inadequacy is one thing to talk about, but the investors may be facing in that particular sector, and failure to meet bond obligation could risk credit downgrades, higher borrowing costs, reduced infrastructure financing appetite, and experts stress the need for cost-reflective tariff. Of course, we've talked about that again and again, that yes, we are saying you don't meet your tariff target, but people will be better happy to pay if they are enjoying electricity, if they see power. People will better want to pay, right? So that's also one of the things that we need to talk about. Is it cost reflective? Am I paying because I have power? All right, so targeted subsidy for vulnerable consumers may be brought in by some sector, by government and all of that, aggressive metering. And let's even talk about metering, where a lot of the persons who are using power do not have meter. All right, so you just come tell them that, oh, your power bill this month is 100,000, and you expect they should not say something, what is called estimated metering. So aggressive metering, because like one of the things I mentioned, that some analysts are suggesting that people will be better pleased to pay for electricity if they know that they have electricity, right? That they have access to this electricity. But if they do not have, right, some communities, some persons may not be willing to pay. So targeted subsidies and even enforcement and making sure that this is done at the right time. So aggressive metering is very important, and enforcement of energy thefts. People who bypass electric meters should be brought to face the law. People who use electricity and refuse to pay, communities should be brought to face the law. That's one of the ways that this monies may be raised for the investors, so they don't go into losing this particular bond. Right? The bond deadline exposes structural weaknesses in Nigeria's power market that financial instruments alone cannot fix. Let's go for a short break. We'll be going for a short break, and when we're back, right, we take some more business stories this morning. The program is Business Points on Global Television. My name is Ugongso. I'll be right back after this break. If you're just joining us, this is Business Points on Global Television. Our next story, the Business Morning, says NIDCC highs 20 billion diaspora remittance via investment. All right, so Nigeria is Africa's largest remittance recipient, with inflows estimated at 20 to 23 billion US dollars annually, accounting for nearly 4 to 5% of Nigeria's GDP. Over 70% of remittance currently goes into consumption, housing, healthcare, education, and daily expenses. So about the new investment-driven strategy of NIDCC plans to redirect flows into diaspora bond, SME financing, infrastructural development, real estate trust. Economic significance could be that over 20 billion naira is successfully mobilized. Forex reserve would strengthen naira volatility, could reduce domestic investments, could also rise, and external borrowing pressure could ease at this particular time. So this Nigerian in Diaspora Chamber of Commerce is saying that this particular period, we could be seeing over 20 billion US dollars coming to Nigeria from Nigerians who are abroad and who are sending money home, who are coming home to spend their festive period. A lot of people who are abroad, they still have strong ties to their loved ones in Nigeria. So you see them sending school fee, sending healthcare money, sending a lot of funds to help those who are in Nigeria. And this is actually very good for our economy. So the Nigerian in Diaspora Commerce is saying that over 20 billion US dollars may be coming into Nigeria, but the money should be utilized and put into infrastructure, put into critical sectors of the Nigerian economy. But let's take another story now. AREA pushes higher mini-grid cap for private investment. All right, so the Rural Electrification Agency remains critical for inclusive growth in Nigeria, and they've come out to say that mini grids could cost between 1,500 to 2,500 per connection, far cheaper than grid extension in remote area. So they're saying instead of trying to extend our national grid to areas are not covered, why don't we look at mini grids in those remote areas? All right, so but there's current regulatory cap limit scale and investor returns. Impact could be higher. It will attract larger investors into that particular sector, enable industrial clusters, reduce diesel dependence, and support climate targets. But environmental and economic experts are saying that mini grids could reduce carbon emissions, support agro-processing, cold storage, digital services, and rural SMEs. All right, so regulatory reform could transform rural economies and accelerate Nigeria's energy transition. And the last story we take this morning, it's from the Nigerian Stock Exchange as they rally investors gain to 257 billion this year. All right, so the Nigerian equities markets have been volatile, reflecting inflationary pressures, but interest rate hikes, FX uncertainty this year, we've seen that a lot. But they're saying that 257 billion naira gain was being made so far this year. But this was driven majorly by banking stocks who've done very well, industrial goods, consumer staples, investor behavior, domestic institutional investors who've also done so well. But foreign participation has remained very low this year, with only about 15% of this money, this gain coming in from foreign investors. But Nigeria has also done well because we've seen more tight monetary policy, high treasury yields, and corporate cost pressures. And we've seen some companies do very well as to their bank accounts at the end of the year. But there is signals, a cautious optimism that long-term growth may be seen in Nigeria's macroeconomic stability and earning strength. All right, so the real development reveals an economy at crossroads. That's all the business stories we're able to take for you this morning. But remember that Nigeria is a land rich with opportunities. Nigeria is a land rich with opportunities, actually. Yes, we may be constrained by structural inefficiency and governance challenge, but and even sometimes policy gaps, but we've seen some sustainable progress. Like we mentioned, the Nigerian Stock Exchange is reporting gain, investor confidence is also coming in, and some form of long-term planning has been seen by some of the reforms that have been put out in Nigeria at this time. My name is Upong Usoro. I'm saying do business. Remember, global television means business. I stood in for my colleague Kikelomo Okere, the queen of business. As you enjoy your festive season, remember to always do business and do the right business. Bye for now.